This is Bruce Wall from the City of Scottsdale's Neighborhood College Program. We're all in this together.
The City of Peoria, we're in this together.
The City of Chandler, we're in this together.
Hi, this is Jamie from the City of Scottsdale with my daughter Jocelyn. We're in this together.
City of Tempe, we are in this together.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our 5th seminar. My name is Lauren Vie. I'm an attorney here at Mulcahy. I've been here for about 5.5 years now, and I've represented planned communities and condominiums throughout all of my time here. Our firm actually currently represents over 1,000 attorneys, or I'm sorry, it's been a morning. Over 1,000 planned communities and condominiums here in the state of Arizona. So we are well versed in all of your needs and how to best address those needs. We are holding this class in partnership with neighborhood services all throughout the Valley. So we are teaching this class with Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Scottsdale, Surprise, Tempe. We love partnering with these cities. We love giving you this information so that you can be the best board that you possibly can be. And we're so thankful for our partnerships with these cities. Let's get right into what we're going to discuss today. So today we are going to be covering the hiring, firing of HOA and condominium vendors and everything that goes in between the hiring and the firing, or hopefully keeping a successful partnership with a vendor. So we're going to start off our discussion by providing a general overview of bidding and contracting, including, like I said, the hiring and firing of vendors. And then we're going to speak about the unique relationship between the boards of directors and their management company. And then we're going to move on to a question that we often receive. Are you required to hire a licensed contractor? We get that question all the time. It's actually probably one of our most asked First Friday questions. And so we're going to answer that for you. We're going to provide you with tips on negotiating contracts, the importance of why we think you should use licensed and bonded contractors, handling disputes, performance issues, and how to end a unsuccessful relationship with a vendor and start a new one. We're going to be sharing material. You'll be able to click on the cheat sheets and follow along. And we're also going to be sending a summary out after the presentation that will include links for all the materials that we posted during the class today. So if for some reason you're unable to access them, we'll send them to you after the class. If you're tuning in via Facebook Live, please send us a direct message with your email address so that we can email you a copy of the outline or cheat sheets at the end of the class. Okay, so I'm going to start the class with a poll. So we're going to have a quick poll that basically asks, what city do you live in? If you can please let me know, where everybody is tuning in from. It's always nice to kind of know where everybody lives because every city is different, every community is different, and you're all facing different issues. Luckily, today what we're talking about is universal. So we'll be able to luckily have everybody, we'll be able to give everybody advice, but we'll wait for the poll here. Okay, cool. So it looks like we have, wow, no one from Avondale. That's unusual, actually. We have some people from Chandler, about 4% from Glendale, 7% from Goodyear. We've got some people in Mesa, Peoria. Looks like most people are tuning in from Scottsdale, and then we've got people from Tempe. Okay, that's awesome. Oh, we have other, never mind. We have a lot of others, so others, welcome. Okay, so thank you so much for answering our poll. And I'm going to give you just a quick update on the legislation that's been pending and passed through our Arizona legislature and signed by the governor. We've had a slow couple of years. Obviously, last year was definitely due to COVID and our legislature not really meeting or only addressing emergency issues last year. This year, legislatures around the country have really been absorbed by issues pertaining to election laws and mask mandates. So that means that we haven't had a whole lot of planned community or condominium laws passed. So far, the governor has only signed 4 Planned Communities and Condominium Act laws into law as of today's date. So the first bill is SB1722, and that bill pertains to civil liability and a public health pandemic, which we are currently still in. So the law actually makes it difficult, even nearly impossible, for a plaintiff to prevail regarding a pandemic-related lawsuit, so long as the association was acting in good faith. So that's something that helps protect the association in the event that you have somebody who claims, I contracted COVID in one of your common areas. As long as we know that the association was acting in good faith and maintaining the area properly, that plaintiff really can't prevail. So that's something that's beneficial to our associations. We also have HB2770. This is a mask mandate. So basically it says that notwithstanding any other law that's passed by the state, town, municipality, a business in the state is not required to enforce any kind of mask mandate. Basically, businesses can decide whether or not they want individuals to wear masks. And obviously with the recent announcement by the CDC, we're going to see more businesses that are saying, hey, vaccinated individuals, you don't need to wear masks. Another one that applies directly to homeowners associations, we have SB1722. This is about political signs. And basically the bill extends the time that you can post a political sign in your lot or, in your unit. So basically, the rule used to be you could have a sign up for 71 days prior to an election, and it had to be taken down 3 days after the election ended. Now, your sign can be left up 15 days after a general election. And if your sign is for a candidate in a primary election who doesn't advance to the general election, you can keep the sign up 15 days after that primary election. So we have to allow political signs for a little bit longer than we used to, essentially. Okay, last one, HB2170. This is about garnishment, which is something that we can use to collect unpaid assessments and funds that have been awarded to us by a court. And currently, the Arizona law does not allow us to recover any attorney's fees associated with those garnishments, which can be difficult for us. So this bill allows garnishments. We can request attorney's fees that are included or incurred to try to initiate a garnishment or in a garnishment action. So this is a really positive development for associations, and we're very pleased to see this, get pushed through and get signed by the governor, because it's going to allow associations to recover a lot more of the fees that they incur to try to, recover unpaid assessments and related amounts. We are constantly on the lookout for any other developments or changes in the legislature. Our legislature hasn't adjourned yet, so we're not seeing a lot of movement on other bills, but we're always watching them. Sometimes there are some that get pushed through at the last minute, and we'll keep you updated via our website and emails, letting you know if anything changes or if we receive any kind of new update from the legislature. Okay, we've got one more quick update on COVID-19 in Arizona. Great news, as of last week, 40% of Arizona's population had received at least one dose of the vaccine. So that's great news. We can all kind of start getting back to regular life. And I'm sure you heard that last week, the CDC released a new statement saying that vaccinated individuals who have been fully vaccinated, whether your dose needed one shot or two, they don't have to wear masks indoors and outdoors. There are exceptions for planes and things like that, public transport, but for the most part, vaccinated individuals don't have to wear masks. So we're going to see a lot more situations where, like I said, we're going to see businesses and restaurants kind of probably lightening their mask restrictions and saying that vaccinated individuals don't still have to wear their masks. We're still getting some pretty common questions about COVID, so I want to address them really quickly for you. So one of the questions we get, can the association still require vaccinated residents to wear masks on common area? The short answer is yes, you can certainly still require all individuals to wear masks in your common areas. We recommend, since the CDC is kind of lifting their mandates, that the association also kind of do the same, that we, try to say, okay, vaccinated individuals, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. So that's fantastic. So, try to take that into account when you are creating your rules and regulations. But obviously, your community best, the needs of your community. So for example, maybe if you are a 55 and older community, or that you have a lot of at-risk individuals in your community, maybe it makes more sense for you to continue to require everybody to wear a mask. But our answer is you don't necessarily have to require vaccinated individuals to wear a mask anymore. Okay, another question is, can associations require proof of vaccinations from their residents? No, we say no. We know there are other businesses that are doing this, but we just think, this is a neighborhood. We don't think it's appropriate for you to require proof of vaccination. So we advise against it. Can the association prohibit unvaccinated residents from using common areas? No, we don't recommend that you do that. They are entitled to use the common areas just like anybody else. You can certainly still require that anybody who's unvaccinated wear a mask. We know that it's very difficult to enforce that or to know who is vaccinated or unvaccinated. So we fully acknowledge the challenge at hand. But, if it's something, if you really feel strongly about unvaccinated individuals wearing masks, make sure you have signs posted in your common areas so that people know that they still need to wear a mask. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears, talk about our main topic for today. And so basically what we're going to be talking about today is tips for selecting a vendor. Obviously, you all have tons of vendors that you work with all the time. It is a huge part of your job as a board member to make sure that you're hiring the right vendors, that you're monitoring them correctly, that they're getting their work done. And so we're going to give you tips on how to deal with these vendors. They can be your management company, your landscaper, company to do a large capital improvement project. There are all kinds of vendors that you work with, and there are really a lot of tips and tricks that we can provide you that will help you work with them and make sure that you have the most effective and successful business relationship that you can. We actually have an excellent cheat sheet on the topic, and so we're going to post that in the chat section on Facebook Live and on Zoom, so you can follow along and kind of look through our tips as well. Here are some tips that we recommend when selecting a contractor. First and foremost, before you hire anybody, your due diligence is absolutely vital. You have to do your homework. You can't just Google it and hope, go with whoever is number one. Are they possibly the best option? Maybe, but there's just so much that you have to consider when you're hiring a vendor. So your due diligence as a board member is really crucial to, again, establishing that really successful relationship between the association and the vendor. So here are some suggestions that we have on how to find a qualified vendor. So one, ask other communities. You have a bunch of neighbors around you that also hire vendors for landscaping or large capital improvement projects or management companies. Ask around, see what they have to say. Other communities are going to be really honest with you about how they feel about the vendor, the work that they do. I think it's one of the best ways to get a truly honest answer about the work that a vendor does is from a neighboring community, because they understand what you're looking for and they understand exactly what you need addressed and how, it takes so much time for you as a board member to manage it. So ask communities around you, try to get their information, try to get, any information you can from them. Also, maybe take a drive and see what communities look especially well kept to you. If you look around, you see roofs that are really well maintained. Maybe ask them who they had as a roofing contractor or landscaping. So just take a look around, see who has a vendor that you think is doing a fantastic job, and then get in touch with that board and see if they can give you any information. It could be really, really helpful. Somebody else that's really great to reach out to, your advisors, your attorney, your CPA. If you have a reserve site, reach out to your reserve specialist, your management company. All of these people have worked with vendors, and trust me, we have seen a ton of vendors in our time practicing community association law. So we can also give you names of people that we've seen time and time again that, again, have established a successful relationship with an association. So don't be afraid to reach out to your vendors. Your advisors. Don't be afraid to reach out to us. We are happy to give a name, for free. That's not something that we would charge you for. If you're looking for a recommendation, we're happy to give that to you. So definitely reach out to us. We also have a sample request. Our office specifically has a sample request for proposal that we can provide to you. So it's a document that basically you can use to give to vendors that you're interested in using and say, this is all the information that we need you to provide when you provide your proposal or bid, whatever you want to call it. And it can be really, really helpful because honestly, sometimes half of the battle is knowing what to ask, what to ask your contractor. So please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to give that template to you, and you can use it for any kind of future instance when you need to obtain some bids. So check the references of your vendors. Ask for references and check them. I know it can be kind of tedious, but that is really, really helpful to ask, again, people what their honest thoughts are about this vendor. Obviously, anybody who's going to try to give you professional services is going to have a big glossy list of all their pros and what a great job they do. So it's really important that you get in touch with people who actually have worked with them, who they list as references. And again, other people who you find have used them, because you'll get a more honest answer about the work they do and what it's like to work with them. You can check to see if the vendors have any complaints against them with entities that regulate them. So you can check with the registrar of contractors. They keep a list of any kind of complaints that have been filed. You can look with the Better Business Bureau, see, if they have any kind of complaints or information. Yelp has that information. Yelp, you kind of have to take with a grain of salt, to be honest, because sometimes they are very disgruntled people, but that's all helpful. Look at that. Are their Yelp reviews mostly negative or are they mostly positive? We have so many resources available to us now where we can double check on somebody very easily and very quickly. So use those resources once you're looking into somebody as a potential vendor. We also have a great cheat sheet on selecting a management company that you can use. So speaking of vendors, we have one specifically for management companies because it really is one of the most critical professional relationships that an association is going to have. You will work with that individual closely. They will be intimately involved with the business operations of your community. And that is a relationship that you really have to give a lot of thought to and really put due diligence into. So we're going to post that cheat sheet for you so that you can go through and look for our tips specifically on selecting a management company. Okay, so now we're going to move on to everyone's favorite question. Do we have to hire a licensed and bonded contractor? We say yes. We think it is just absolutely not worth the risk of hiring an unlicensed contractor. We have seen that go sideways so many times for so many associations. You've probably all heard of the phrase, penny wise and pound foolish. That's something that we apply pretty regularly to a situation where an association has hired an unlicensed or unbonded contractor. It ends up being a situation where the association has no recourse if the vendor doesn't do a very good job on the work. Whereas when you have a licensed contractor, they're licensed by the registrar of contractors. So if they are slow on the work, if you don't hear from them anymore, if the work is subpar, you can send it over to the registrar of contractors and you have that recourse that you're not having to spend a lot of money to obtain that recourse. Whereas when you have an unlicensed contractor, you don't have that entity that you can go to and your recourse becomes honestly more costly. It's, okay, do we file a lawsuit? If their contract demands arbitration, do we have to arbitrate the dispute? And that gets very costly. So it may seem simpler in the short run to use an unlicensed contractor because they're usually cheaper, but in the long run, it can end up being just 10 times more expensive to use an unlicensed contractor. So we recommend that you, again, always check, make sure they're licensed, check with the Arizona Registrar of Contractors, check to make sure they're bonded, check to make sure they're insured. That's a big one too. Check their references, do your financial research, ask them for their certificates of insurance for the bonds that they hold. Again, check with the Better Business Bureau, check with the Arizona Registrar of Contractors. You're going to have a lot of information at your fingertips to make sure that they're the right choice for you. Arizona law requires that most contractors be licensed through but that they require them to be registered through the Arizona Registrar of Contractors. They have a very easy website for you to access. You just type in the name of the vendor and all their information is going to come up, including prior complaints. So you'll be able to look through that and see, if they have any kind of pending complaints they're dealing with a different client. All of that is, available to you. Something you can also double check when you're looking at information for a vendor is you can check CAI online, that's Community Associations Institute. You can check with them. They're going to also have a pretty expansive resource database for you to look through and see what other communities have thought of a vendor. So definitely check them too. We'll link that website link on the chat so that you can double check with CAI. They're a fabulous resource for community association issues. So back to the Registrar of Contractors. So A.R.S. 321151 sets forth that Arizona's contractors have to be licensed. So it's unlawful for a person to actually even submit a bid or respond to a request for a proposal for construction services without having a license. There is an exception to the rule, and the exception is known as the handyman exemption. And so basically you can look through the exemption. It's in 321121A4. And basically 14. And what the exemption says is that a person who doesn't hold a contractor's license, they can accept work for amounts less than $1,000. So technically, for work that's going to cost less than $1,000, can you use an unlicensed contractor? Yes, you can. Again, we don't recommend it. We recommend that you find someone who is licensed, who is bonded, who is insured, who can, I guess, behave in a little bit more of a professional manner than a random handyman that could kind of get you into trouble. Again, Arizona Contractors has an awesome website. We really recommend it, easy to use, and they'll be able to help you out with any information that you need on a vendor. Okay, so now we're going to move a little bit to tips for negotiating contracts. It's a skill. Negotiating is a skill. It's an art form. And we know it takes practice, but we have full confidence in you that you can absolutely negotiate any contract as a board member. And it's important to negotiate too. I know sometimes it feels easier to default and simply take an offer as it's given to you, but negotiating is an important part of the process because it's your job as a board member to make sure that you are protecting the association and trying to get the best deal possible. And keep in mind, when I say the best deal possible, I am not saying the cheapest. The cheapest does not mean that you're getting the best necessarily. It means that you've looked through a contract, and even if, let's say, the contractor costs a little bit more than the other individuals that you've looked at, if you look at the proposal in totality and you say, you know what, this really is the best option for us, we get the most from this vendor, let's try to talk down the price or talk about ways that we can cut down on the price. That's negotiating. That's making sure that you get the best deal possible for the association, is making sure you get the best work that you can get at hopefully the best price you can get. Okay, so once you've determined that you want to hire a contractor, ask the contractor to send over a sample contract. A contract can be very telling. We have seen all kinds of different contracts from vendors over our time practicing community association law. Sometimes they are very short, they're a page long, which means there's kind of a lot of pertinent information missing. Sometimes they're very long and can include a lot of legalese that's hard for you to read through. If that's the case, actually, either way, we recommend that you send them to us. Contracts that are missing a lot of information are honestly can be just as dangerous as contracts that seem overwhelming and have a lot of legalese in them. So you want to make sure that you're reviewing the contract, ask to look at it, make sure it looks professional. If you have questions about it, ask us. Even for our first impression, say, hey, this contract is only a page long. It doesn't seem like it really contains very much information. What impression of the contractor do you have looking at this? We can help you with that and give you our first impression of working with them, because sometimes the length of the contract really does say something about the vendor. I'm not saying it has to be 10 pages long, but we do want to make sure that our bases are covered for them and for us as the association. Okay, so ask them to send over a sample contract. Do not tell the contractor that they are hired when you ask for a sample contract. Really be careful in your words. Make sure that you say it's a sample contract, that the board would like to review what they expect to be the terms of employment or the terms of the project. So be careful. You want to have some room to negotiate, and make sure that if you tell them that they're hired, even if you are like 99% sure that you're going to hire them, you'll have a lot less room to negotiate. If they know that you already want to work with them, they're going to be a lot more steadfast in the terms of that contract and not negotiating. So making sure that you don't lock yourself in too early is really important. So again, I already said this, have us review the contract, whether you think it's too short, too long. Again, short contracts generally mean that there's something that could be missing that is really important to protect the association. Long contracts, you may just need a little help getting through them to make sure that there isn't some kind of hidden small print that could be really detrimental for the association. So have your attorney review it. It generally, honestly, truly doesn't take us terribly long. We just want to make sure that you are as protected as you can possibly be. Okay, so some things that we usually suggest to be negotiated in Exhibit A. So an Exhibit A on a contract normally is basically their fee schedule or their fee agreement. It's going to include all the costs that could potentially come up, including, including just your general actual total costs, but also there might be a bunch of little costs hidden in there. It might be, well, if you submit a work change order, we charge an additional fee for you to submit a work change order. Make sure you look at all of that. But that is an area too that there's room to wiggle. So for example, something we can say, hey, we don't want to pay for a work change order unless it's, we're changing an enormous part of the scope of work. That's something that we can negotiate on and make sure that we touch on the needs of the association. So that's a great area for negotiation. The termination clause. Make sure the contract has it. We've seen a lot of associations get in a lot of trouble because it's not in the contract, but that is an area where we could have some wiggle room to, maybe instead of the association having to give 60 days notice, we only have to give 30 days notice. That's an area for some wiggle room. Also indemnification provisions. I will bet that most contracts are going to have a provision that says that, if the contractor is sued for something to do with the work, that the association has to indemnify them. Well, that should go both ways. They should also say, hey, association, if you're sued for the work and it directly relates to the work we've done for you, we will also help indemnify you. So those are great areas for negotiation that we want to look at. There are others, but it can be really specific to the contract that you have. So again, check with us, see what you think, ask us, what can we negotiate on? What do you think can be changed? Tell us what you're concerned about, and then we can tell you whether or not we think that's something that can be negotiated on. And there's generally no harm in asking. Worst thing is that they're going to say no. So there's no harm in asking, hey, we're worried about this. What can we do about it? Okay. So how to handle problems with a vendor. Here are some examples of problems with some management companies, which again, they're a vendor that we often hear. So the management company telling you how you're going to operate your business, basically saying, this is how you have to do it. That you're tired of a change of manager, that there's a high turnover, and you're not really getting any work out of them because the new manager is always catching up on the work that they've done for you. You feel like your relationship is just honestly broken, that you feel like you're not getting what you expected out of the relationship. Maybe they're not feeling like they're getting what they expected out of the professional relationship. Embezzlement, those are all issues that we hear a lot. And so when we hear these issues, our first answer to you generally is going to be, have you told your vendor, management company, whoever it is, about these issues? Because I know that you have all heard me say this about dealing with your homeowners, but it is just as important in dealing with your vendors. Communication is so critical and so important. So many things can be fixed and addressed if you just communicate the concern to your vendor. It's just so important in any professional relationship. And I'm sure that you all have found that in your own professional lives, that communication is so key, or that miscommunication can result in problems. So if you have a problem with your vendor, make sure you tell them. Don't sit there and wait for the problem to magically correct itself, because the vendor truly may not be aware that you consider it to be a problem. So you have to tell them what the problem is. Something else that you can do too, if you suddenly feel like the vendor isn't living up to, your expectations, look at the contract. Go back to the contract and say, okay, what specifically did that vendor say they would do? It's possible that maybe you were expecting something that was never agreed upon in the contract. It's very possible as well that they are not living up to the terms of the contract. So make sure that you look. It's also helpful when you go to the vendor and you can say, hey, vendor, we're not really happy with this portion of your performance. And it's very, very helpful when you do that, you can say, here's a provision of our contract that said that this was something that you were going to do. It's more difficult for the vendor to kind of give you an excuse if you can point to something in the contract that says, hey, you agreed to do this, take this action, and you're not doing it, or we feel like you're not doing it properly. So definitely refer back to the contract. It's a really good idea. I know that these conversations can be really awkward, but it's a really good idea to have something like this in writing if you're doing it at a meeting. So, for example, you can discuss the job performance of a vendor or an employee in an executive session, which is closed to your members. So let's say you're having this discussion in executive session. Make sure that the discussion is referenced in your meeting minutes, that, maybe you put a little bit more detail in your meeting minutes so that your complaints and your concerns are properly documented, and you can, if the issue isn't corrected, you can go back to that writing and say, hey, remember we discussed this earlier, you were notified of this, we're not seeing an improvement or change, and here's why that concerns us. So make sure you properly document all of it. Consider whether talking to a higher up or the head of the company would be a better idea. We recommend this all the time with management companies. We hear from people all the time that they're upset with their manager. They don't feel like their manager's listening to them, and they've never actually thought about going a step above. And I think that's generally out of, trying to be polite and trying to be kind and not get the individual in trouble. But while I do understand that, at the same time, if you have somebody who's not living up to your expectations, if you have somebody who is not actually taking the actions the way they should as expounded upon in your contract, it is really helpful to go to the manager or, higher up, whoever it is, and say, we're having these issues. We want your help in addressing them. Normally, the individual is going to, straighten up right away and start acting the way that they should. But it can be really, really helpful just to go to a higher up and kind of get their point of view on the matter. So ask them. And then make sure you're explicit about what needs to be changed too. Don't just say we're unhappy, because that's not helpful to anybody. Make sure that you tell them exactly what issues you're having, tell them how you want them to be corrected, and give them a time frame to do that. A lot of contracts are going to have a timeline within them. It's going to be called like a timeline to cure or correct a default. Normally, it's going to be about 30 to 60 days, where once a contractor or a vendor is notified of some kind of issue, they have like 30 to 60 days to correct the problem. And then if they don't correct it within that timeline, then you may consider terminating the contract. Some contracts have that, some don't. But if you have a contract that doesn't have something like that, impose it yourself. Say, hey, vendor, we're having this issue. We've made you aware of the issue. It's here in writing. We've told you in person. And please correct this within 30 days. If it's not corrected within 30 days, we think there's going to be an issue. There's no shame in doing that. Make sure that you give a timeline. That way, especially with contractors, we all know that construction work and plumbing and things like that tend to move at a slower pace. So giving someone a deadline can really motivate them to make sure that they get it done within a reasonable amount of time. If you do all of this and the problems continue, meet with the contractor one last time, make sure that your grievances are properly aired. Again, we recommend making sure that it's documented, make sure it's in writing. You can do it in person too, but give them one more chance to correct themselves. You don't have to give them 30 days again necessarily, but try to give them a reasonable timeline to make sure that they try to meet your needs. And then if they don't, it might be time to think about terminating that agreement and moving on to a different vendor. Before you do this though, before you actually terminate the agreement, contact us and have us review the contract. Every contract is different. Every termination clause is different. I have seen some that require 90 days written notice, so you're locked into that agreement for the next 90 days. I have seen some where all you have to do is give notice that the relationship is terminated and it's dead and done as of that second. Normally, there's about 30 days written notice that's required, but you do want to have us check it, because we have definitely seen situations where an association or a board thinks that they have properly terminated a relationship, and then the contractor comes back and says, well, no, our contract specifically requires that you notify us in writing, which we would always recommend anyway, but you want to make sure that you're following the terms of the contract when you're terminating the relationship. Otherwise, you could end up in a sticky situation where you're continuing to have to work with this vendor when your relationship is already irrevocably broken. So make sure that you do that. How to end a relationship with a vendor. Be nice about it. Don't send them an, expletive laden email about how you're so disappointed in their work. Be professional. Remember, you are running a nonprofit corporation. It may not feel like, a Fortune 500 company, but you're running a corporation and we need to conduct ourselves as such. You need to make sure that you are behaving in a professional manner. So be nice, don't burn bridges. You also have a reputation as an association. Vendors talk to each other too. So don't necessarily be as mean as humanly possible, because that vendor will spread that to other vendors, and you may have people that don't want to work with you in the future. So be nice, terminate the contract according to the terms of the contract. Make sure you've reviewed that. Make sure we've reviewed that. You also may want to consider if the relationship has become especially contentious, you may want to have your legal counsel write a letter of termination. I've had to do this multiple times for a relationship that is especially contentious. It's easier then because you've kind of removed yourself from the equation, and you can have your attorney kind of help you end the relationship at that point. So that's something you want to consider if the relationship has really soured. Have a well thought out plan for how termination will work, especially if you're in a situation where, let's say, you're in the middle of construction. You may want to start looking for a new vendor right away. Again, you need to go through the process I've already outlined, but you need to have a plan in place to make sure that you're not leaving, I don't know, an empty pool, that no one's going to touch for several months. You need to make sure that you have a plan in place and how to transition from one vendor to another. Again, we can help you with this. Your management company can help you with this, but definitely have a plan in place. Communicate with your owners about the transition. I know that sometimes it feels like your owners are not paying attention, or you feel like this is a board issue. The homeowners don't get a say in this, so it doesn't matter. But that's not the case. So make sure that you communicate. This vendor wasn't working. Here's why the vendor wasn't working. We're in the process of finding somebody else. Your owners will highly value your communication, and knowing what's going on in the community is really important to them, because your owners pay attention to more than you know. They will notice if a vendor is there every day and suddenly they're not there. So communicate, have us, help you with the process. We're here to help you. It can be uncomfortable. It can be contentious. And that's why we're happy to help. I can't tell you how many meetings I'm brought in to be like the heavy, essentially, and be the bad guy. And it works. People behave much better when an attorney is involved. So don't hesitate to get us involved, especially if you are just trying to get out of a bad relationship. Okay, so here are some closing thoughts that I have on vendors. One, work as a team. You are a team. Again, you're running a nonprofit corporation. So make sure the board has a pretty united front to begin with on the vendor. Again, you want to thoroughly discuss everything. You want to make sure everybody feels comfortable. It doesn't have to be a unanimous vote to approve a vendor. We normally don't have unanimous votes in this business, but make sure everybody feels comfortable. Make sure that everybody understands that you're working together, and make that vendor feel comfortable and like they're a member of the team, especially if you could end up having a long-term relationship. I know some vendors you're only going to have around for a construction project for a short period of time, but your management company, your landscaper, your pool service, those are all long-term relationships, and you do need to think of it as a relationship. So make sure that you have that mindset of being a team, working together, having good communication skills, because it will make your life with that vendor so much better and so much easier. Be respectful, be nice. You'd be shocked how many people don't do this, or how many people talk down to their vendors. Don't do that. It's just a jerk move. Be nice to your vendors. They're providing you with a service. They're trying to help you. They are going to be a lot easier to deal with if you are nice to them, and then they will probably be nice to you. With that being said, make sure you hold them accountable as well. It is a business relationship. Try to do so delicately and politely, but at the same time, make sure they know that you are monitoring their work, that you know the terms of the contract, and that you are aware when they are not living up to the terms of that contract. Make sure that they do know that they are expected to do their job the way that they said they would. When there are problems with a vendor, and it's very likely that you will have problems at some point, communicate with the vendor. Try to find common ground. Again, if you have to go to a superior, go to a superior. That's not a problem. Listen to the vendor's side of the story. There may be something that we don't know. So make sure that you get their side of the story and listen to them. Just be quiet and listen. Let them get their side of the story out, even if it sounds crazy. And then again, give them specific guidance on what needs to be changed. It's always better for everybody if you can be really specific and direct, and not saying micromanage them, but I'm saying be direct about what needs to be changed, because then they're a lot more likely to change it. And if they don't, and you've been very explicit, then you have a very good inclination that they're not listening to you, they don't plan on changing that issue, and then maybe you can start thinking about transitioning to a new vendor. Know when it's time to make a change. Like I said, I just gave a great example. If you give somebody specific instructions on something that you need changed and they tell you they'll change it, and that doesn't really change, it may be time to move on to somebody else. And there's no shame in that. So talk with your advisors, make sure you follow the process that I previously listed for you, but know when it's time to change, because sometimes you can just be too far gone in that relationship and you're just stuck basically trying to micromanage or constantly watch this vendor that's just not living up to the terms of the contract. And that's unhappy for everybody. Have a plan to find a replacement. Again, use our cheat sheets. We provided them here. Make a plan. If you want us to look over your plan, that's fine too. We can give it a quick once over, let you know if there are things we're missing. Contact us about that request for proposal document that we can give you so that you have that on hand. If you ever need to get a new vendor, feel free to reach out to us anytime for that. Use us. We are here to help you. We have dealt with just thousands of vendor and contractor situations over the years. We are here to help. We have tons of experience with it. So if you feel like you've gotten a relationship that is truly beyond repair, contact us. Again, we're here to help and we're happy to help you. Thank you for being here. Every time you attend these classes, I know that this is taking time out of your lives and your daily schedules to be here and listen to me chatter. But just know that you're doing it to make your communities better. And this information will be so helpful and so beneficial for you and make your life on the board easier, and therefore make the lives of your residents easier and make it better for them. So we thank you for being here. We also want to especially thank the neighborhood services departments for Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Scottsdale, Surprise, Tempe, and all of you others out there who are tuning in from other neighborhoods. Thank you so much. We always love working with all of you. We wish we could still see you in person, but we do love being here online with you as well. And we want to also remind you that you can join us on Tuesday, June 15th. So that's going to be our last spring session class for our next class. It's going to be a special class because we're going to be answering all of your legal questions, big or small, and the class won't end until we answer all of them. If you want to ask us a legal question or you want to listen on other people's legal questions, because why not? I mean, why not figure out what other associations are dealing with? We may already be answering a question that deals with something that you have a question about. Tune in. It'll be super helpful, super informative. So bring your question, think about it until June 15th, and then get it over to us, and we'll be happy to answer them. In the near future, we're going to be announcing our virtual class sessions for the second half of 2021. We try to be on the ball about that. So check our website. You'll receive emails in the future if you receive emails from us, but we're always posting our classes and making sure that you know about them. And thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you have a question or you want a request for a bid or you want to talk about management companies, call me. I'm here for you. I'm happy to talk with you. And thank you so much for tuning in today. Bye, everybody.